This is Into Math 3rd grade, lesson 12.2. Use AM and PM to describe time. I can use AM and PM to describe time. Please gather your workbook and a pencil and turn to page 332. We will start under Build Understanding Part 1. You can pause at any time. For a day in December in New York City, sunrise is at 7:15. Sunset is at 4:30. Is sunrise at 7:15 a.m. or p.m.? Is sunset at 4:30 a.m. or p.m.? So we're going to be learning about AM and PM, and our first direction asks us to show the times on the clock, and how can you show AM and PM on the number line? So we have two clocks here, and you may want to pause and go ahead and draw in the times to show 7:15 and 4:30. So we'll start with the 7:15, and we draw the small hand for the hour, and then we'll draw the minute hand, the longer hand, right at the 15 mark. So now we have 7:15 showing on the first clock. Next, we will make 4:30 on the other clock. So we will draw the hour hand in between the 4 and the 5, and the minute hand showing 30 minutes. So now we have created a clock that is showing 4:30. Okay, the second part asks, how can you show AM and PM on the number line? So we need to connect to our vocabulary to understand AM and PM, and also midnight and noon, because at the bottom of our number line, we show 12 midnight, 12 noon, and 12 midnight. So the first step is to know that 12 midnight is 12 at night. And you can see that the word night is actually in the word midnight. We also learned that noon is 12 o'clock in the daytime. So during the day when the clock hits 12, that is noon during the daytime. Okay, the other vocabulary we are learning, the first part is AM, which is the time after midnight and before noon. So right after midnight, we have AM, and then right before noon is the time of AM. So we could draw two lines here with arrows that say this is the time for AM. And then for PM, it says it's the time after noon and before midnight. So right after it hits noon, we're going to see that this part here is PM, and then that stops when it turns midnight, and then it becomes AM again. We have now drawn AM and PM on our number line. So now let's take a look at part B. Is sunrise after midnight or after noon? So let's find the two places we're looking. Here's midnight and here's noon. So when does the sun rise? When does the sun come up? Is it after midnight, or is it after the middle of the day? Well, the middle of the day, the sun is already out. So it would need to be after midnight, because after noon, the sun is already out. So we can answer after midnight. Let's take a look at the next part. Is sunset before midnight or before noon? So they're asking, does the sun set here before midnight, so before this time, or does it set before noon, the middle of the day? And the correct answer is it is before midnight. So the sun's going to go down before it is midnight. Let's take a look at part D. Write the times with AM and PM. So we can see that our 7:15 clock, when the sun rises, would be in our AM category. And then the sun setting at 4:30 would be in our PM category. So we can write that the sunrise is written as 7:15 a.m. and our sunset is written as 4:30 p.m. Let's take a look at the next page, page 333, under Step It Out Part 2. Roy reads a book before bed at 8. Does Roy read the book at 8 a.m. or 8 p.m.? Part A. On the number line, show the time that Roy is reading. If you would like to pause and try Part A on your own, you may do so, and then just come back to check your answer. Otherwise, you can follow along with me. Okay, so we know that here is 12 noon, which means this is the middle of the day. Typically when we eat lunch, the sun's out, and then we have midnight here where most of us are sleeping. It's the middle of the night. That's what midnight means. So it says he read a book before bed, which means he was going to sleep. And we don't go back to sleep before noon. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Here is where I'm going to show 8 o'clock, and I'll erase the other marks that I made to find that 8. Let's look at Part B. What part of the day describes AM times? We can go back to our vocabulary and remember that AM is the time that is after midnight and before noon. So we can explain our thinking by completing Part B, after midnight and before noon. Let's take a look at Part C. Use the number line to tell if Roy reads the book at 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. and explain. Looking at the number line, we know that the 8 o'clock is before he goes to bed. And so that is in the evening, which is after noon and before midnight. And we know that PM is the time that is after noon but before midnight. So we can explain our thinking that it is 8 p.m. and that means before bed at 8 is afternoon and before midnight. As always, you can go back and rewatch this video and pause along the way anytime as needed.